How's it going, theater freaks? Welcome back to my channel, and you might notice something different about me. About me. I just got some train tracks on my teeth, and I'm still learning how to do the lip thing. My lips don't want to touch now, because I'm not used to all this. See, my teeth are really crooked, so I actually have springs, so my lips don't actually want to touch all the time. So sometimes I go, I'm gonna have a bread and butter sandwich. Bear with me a little bit there. I'm learning how to talk with my new mouth. And what better way to learn than to record a video? So with that said, let's get into, my first Broadway show experience. Now, the very first one I had was not a very great one, I have to say, not because the show wasn't good, it was actually Rent. I love Rent, as you know, click in that video right there. But unfortunately, when I actually saw it live, I was in the very back because, see, I wasn't really wanting to splurge a ton of money, but I wanted to see it because I had a lot of friends who were seeing it. So I said, okay, I'll buy a ticket. I'll get one of the cheap seats. So for $60, I got one of the upper balcony seats. And at this particular theater, the upper balcony is way up there. I literally had to look down like this to see the stage, and the stage was like that big. There are a lot of theaters where you can get cheap seats. There are a lot of theaters where you can get cheap seats and it still looks pretty good. The Marquee Theater, for instance, comes to mind. That was my first experience, but this is the first one I think was the real full gulp of the Broadway experience. A month later, Wicked the musical was also in town, and I decided to go ahead and splurge on a good seat at that production. So I got the middle orchestra. I was seeing the stage completely from, well, the middle, and I got a pretty darn good experience of that show. And I wanted to just talk to you about that whole thing and how I realized that even though Broadway is really expensive, it really is worth it. And I just wanted to show you how I came to that conclusion. As a former stingy person, I'm still stingy, but now I have a little bit of less stinginess for Broadway specifically. So growing up, my family, we didn't really do a whole lot of Disneyland stuff, like splurging a ton of money on vacations and stuff. So the idea of spending like $150 on one ticket for one show that was going to last like 2.5 hours was kind of crazy to me until I actually did it and I saw why people do it. So I saw Wicked live. I'm just kidding, I'm not gonna do that. So I saw Wicked live, and when I bought the ticket, immediately I was actually really excited for it. Like a lot more excited than I would have been for something that was just $20. You see, psychologically, when you put a lot of money into something, you are more likely to look forward to that thing since you put so much money into it. Your mind's naturally gonna want to soak it in a little bit more. It's also hard to lick my lips or suck spit off my lips, so that's another weird thing. So I had more expectation for it, and I was looking forward to it more, and the actual production was so much better. And now, of course, the big question, was it worth the money? So let me just walk you through the impressions I got from the show. Now, to be clear, this isn't a review of Wicked. I'll do that in some other video. This is me spilling out the exact, I feel like I have when I sound like when in movies someone's been stranded in a desert for 2 weeks, so they sound dehydrated. So up until now, all my experience of seeing a show was either a high school production or a community theater production, which isn't bad, but it's a very different experience. So one of the first things I noticed when I walked into the theater was the massive set. You have the map of Oz, you have the big dragon on the top, you've got the kind of turning gear designs on the side of the stage. It looks really grand and majestic. So I'm sitting down for this production that I have spent over $150 for, but now the show actually begins, and what is it like? So the first thing I remember is the curtains being pulled and the flying monkey crawling on stage, and he's got great makeup and costuming, and already I'm in a stage of oh, this is gonna have a really good production, isn't it? And then the actual song begins, and we see the scene change, and we see Glinda on the big bubble, and I'm like, oh yeah, these shows actually use the insane amount of money that we pay to make these awesome production values. So every time the set transitioned or something changed mid-scene, it was just so visual and such a show in and of itself. Now, one thing I wanted to do as an actor myself is I wanted to kind of watch the show and think, what's really the difference in the performances between this professional production and the community production? What's really the difference? Obviously, oh, they're better, but how specifically? And I think the thing I noticed is that there's just so much more energy put into the performances, and that's really just because it's their full-time job. In community, you do your job, you go home, take a nap or rest or eat, and then you go to your show and you kind of do the best you have with the little energy you have left. But on Broadway, that is your actual job. That's the thing you put most of your energy of the day into in the first place. So there's a very visual difference with the performances in a professional production versus a community production. And I think that's something that I took to learn myself as someone who was doing a lot of community theater is, even though it's not your job, try to perform as if it is. Perform as if you've been resting the whole day. Energetically, you prioritize the show. This show is your job. And try to perform as if that is the case, even though it isn't. Even though I would often be burned out from my job. I was like teaching kids at the time. And then I would go to a show and be really tired. I noticed from watching this, and I learned as an actor, that that's really the secret, is to act as though this is where all your energy comes out. I hope that made sense. I was trying to learn from the production too, since I was also an actor at the time. I say was because there was no pandemic at the time. Also, the Emerald City was incredible. It got a huge applause from the audience, and that was weird. Like, the idea of the audience actually clapping and applauding from just the sight of a scene, like just the set being there made them clap. That was something that was foreign to me. You never see that in a community production or a high school production. You don't see the audience just in awe of the stage and how it looks to the point where they just have to like interrupt the show and clap. So that's an energy you can only get from experiencing a Broadway or professional theater experience. Did I say experience twice? Oh well. Like I said, Emerald City was beautiful. It was very green and sparkly and shiny, and the choreography was wonderful. It's just the showiness. It's just on a whole other level. And then when we saw The Face of Oz, that was something else I really enjoyed. Seeing the clearly expensive animatronic technology happening with the face, and then the voice that the wizard would speak with. It was this really bassy, loud voice that would shake the whole room. Not loud to where it would hurt your ears, but just like very bassy and very grounded. If you do a lot of community theater, you can probably relate to there being a lot of somewhat subpar sound quality, and that was something that was kind of interesting to not have to deal with seeing a show. I'm not trying to poo-poo on community theater here, but the point of my video is to say why it could be worth it to spend the extra buck to see a professional theater production. Now, the actors who were playing the leads, Aaron Mackey played Glenda and Marian Torres played Elphaba, and their performances just blew me away. And when Marian Torres sang the song The Wizard and I, that's a song I didn't remember hearing before watching this production. You always hear about Popular, For Good, Defying Gravity, and yet when I watched her sing The Wizard of I was just blown away. The way the stage changes color while she's in the middle of one of her long notes, the orchestration is phenomenal. And I felt like that was a really underrated song, and it was enough for me to put it on the list actually of top 10 underrated songs in musical theater, once again right there. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is this little well-known song called Defying Gravity. So I knew Defying Gravity was the big song of the show, and just listening to it, it sounds very grand and spectacular. I remember that big last part where there's this crescendo and Elphaba sings everything on that high range, but I had no idea how grand and spectacular it was until I actually saw it. The scene where she goes, it's me, and then she flies up and they all kind of like disperse as the light. Something about the way the lights intersected and met at her and then went down, and it looked like she had a huge cape behind her, and of course the size of the stage, and that I was lucky enough to have a seat where I was kind of like, I was looking up at her like this, and it was like, oh my gosh, whoa! I was in goosebumps. I was crying tears of sheer amazement and amazeness. Like, in that moment, I had like 5,000 thoughts of all the other shows I was going to see and how I was going to go to New York and I was going to watch this show and that show, and I wanted to watch Wicked 500 more times. And then I had ideas of how I'm just going to perform better because all the energy was so inspirational. I was going to change the way I acted forever. And it was like, what? So it kind of changed my life a little bit. I never thought an effect that if you just explain to me doesn't sound that spectacular. Oh yeah, she levitates. She's on a little thingy. How is that inspirational? Because you have to be there. You have to be there and see it for yourself, and you will be amazed by what you see. And part of the reason I'm having such a terrible time explaining it is because I have train tracks in my mouth, but also because it's hard to convey an experience. All I could do is just tell you it was this, this, and this, and then you would translate that and say, oh, that's kind of like this other time in my life when I experienced that, so it must be like that. Oh, okay. And then you watch the show and say, no, it's totally different. Ben was lying. It's even better. Well, yeah, because I can't convey how great it was. All I can tell you was that it inspired me so much during Act 2. I just remember stepping out to buy a cookie or something and just being like, oh, this is what people pay all this money for. This is amazing. This is my favorite thing ever. This is like my favorite art forever and ever. And I'm always going to be in theater. And it like solidified how much I loved theater. I'm not going to go through Act 2 because Act 2 was more about the story and it was more about the characters. For Good was beautiful, but there weren't as many like huge moments that changed my life as much. So those were kind of the main highlights were in Act 1. But the show was spectacular. Other people in my city who had seen other tours come in in or even seen it on Broadway have told me that that was a particularly good production with a really strong cast. Now, another thing I did, this was also a very first experience, was I went to the stage door for the first time. Now, the stage door, if you don't know, and I'm going to put the video tag right there, stage door is where you go in the back, and it's where the actors come out and they can sign or take pictures or whatever and then leave. I hadn't heard about this. I had a friend tell me about stage doors and that you could actually go and get stuff signed by the actors, and I thought that was incredible. But Broadway is special that way, where it lets you have that closer connection with the stars. So I did that. I got to meet Aaron Mackey and Marianne Torres, and I also got to see Jason Gray, who played the wizard. He did a very particularly good job. He was an older man, but he had such a cadence and an energy in his performance, and with his choreography, he would have made me look like an old man. So it was cool to get to meet him, and also Mike Wartella. So Mike Wartella played Bach, and he got into a little bit of trouble because he came to Fresno and did this video on his social media somewhere. I don't know if it was a Snapchat or Instagram or whatever, but he was downtown Fresno, and of course Fresno is not some huge massive city where there's tons of people, nothing like Manhattan, and he does kind of a selfie video of him singing to the tune of New York, New York, and he changes it to Fresno, Fresno, and he changes the lyrics in a way that kind of makes fun of the fact that there's no one on the streets, and he says stuff like, "There's no one here, yay Fresno." So he kind of sarcastically was, anyway, the point is, he got in trouble because a lot of Fresnans got really butthurt about it. It was actually kind of a little bit of a news story in the area. It was really interesting. He had to like release a story on his Instagram apologizing. So that was kind of weird, but he did a great job. I got to meet him. He seemed like a perfectly nice guy, and just, it was so weird to actually do a stage door. It was weird. I don't know, getting to actually meet the people who are on the stage of the production that you just watched. Like, I didn't know that was possible. So that happened. I got the two lead women to sign not only the program. Wait a minute, where's my program? I have the program. Sign right here. In fact, did they? I don't think they did, actually. This is Mike Wartella and Jason Gray. They signed here. The girls signed a poster, which I don't have with me because it was getting really worn out. I had moved a lot since then. I moved to Fresno, and I was living at another town near Fresno, then I moved to Fresno, then I moved to LA, then back, and I went through a lot of move transitions, and it's not in great quality anymore, unfortunately, the poster, I mean. So it's there. My brother is keeping watch over it, but here's a picture of it. They signed it. It was really cool to have that happen. On the way back, I remember just listening to the soundtrack and just kind of like replaying the memories of the show from seeing it. And it was like, oh my gosh, what did I just see this? I've never seen anything like that. I want to see more Broadway shows. That was amazing. And I started buying tickets to other tours. And most of all, I had planned a trip to New York City after seeing that show. So that summer I ended up going, and I planned this whole trip out, and I saved up money to do it because I was so inspired by that production, and it really changed my life. And then right when that happened is right around when COVID hit, and I want to see more shows, and I can't wait, and I want to do shows so people can see them, and it would just be amazing, and I can't wait for it all to happen again, and I want to see Wicked again, and you should see live theater and professional theater, even though it's expensive, because it will be worth it. And I think I'm a little more comfortable talking with train tracks in my mouth now. All I had to do is just think about what I'm saying and not how I'm saying it, and then it comes out better. That's how you do it. That's how you live life, in fact. I don't really have an outro to that. I don't know how to top all that. Thank you for watching. Let me know what your first Broadway experience was. Let me know why it is you love seeing live theater. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Click subscribe if you enjoy these stories. Usually they're less crazy like this. Usually I do more substantial reviews and things like that, but I thought this time I would tell you a story of my first Broadway experience and just have a little more of an authentic thing, and I will sound better, I promise. So with that said, thanks again for watching. Keep loving theater, and I will see you next time.
And nobody in all of us, no wizard that there is or was, is ever going to bring me